the tech billionaires, they're wanting to accelerate capitalism into a self-sustaining AI. At some point, humanity will have a chance to redefine what their purpose is outside of utility to an economy and the hours or the value they provide.
Preston Rhodes is the founder of Instant Scalability, a leading AI automation agency. He's an early pioneer in the no-code automation space, owner of LLM Academy, and one of the top AI creators in the industry.
You said that social media is not social, it's just a training system for identity and validation. What did you mean by that?
And the content you see is changing your worldview. You will end up realizing none of your opinions are even yours, none of your thoughts are even yours, and none of the things you want are even things you want. I spent so much money on stupid stuff, and now I'm putting my money into Meta, into Oracle, into what I know is replacing humanity.
Do you agree with Elon Musk's statement that work in the very near future will be completely optional? So for anyone watching who doesn't know your content or what you do, who is Preston Rhodes and what do you do?
Yeah, well, that's a great question because I'm honestly trying to still figure out myself who Preston Rhodes is. A lot of times I feel like, we know other people better than we know ourselves. But I mean, the image of Preston Rhodes that's shared online that you've learned from me through, that other people know me from, is a young entrepreneur who has a passion for technology, has always been involved in technology, whether it was from cryptocurrency, learning about the immutable ledger and the blockchain, to then automation and no-code workflows, to now just being right on the front lines of artificial intelligence. And so, I find myself to just be a thought leader, somebody who brings new ideas to the table, whether you're older, younger, in the middle, and therefore essentially to be able to create environments and conversations that help people excel and take advantage of the same technology that is essentially replacing them at the end of the day. So, yeah, that's Preston Rhodes.
Awesome. And what kind of got you started on this trajectory? I know you had an AI automation agency, Instant Scalability, you ran AI agents. So walk me through that, how you got into that and what that journey was like.
Yeah, so to get started on my background, I come from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I ended up going to the University of Cincinnati for a finance degree. And I ended up then dropping out of school because I found a software called Go High Level, as I'm sure you're familiar with. There's, out there all over the internet before kind of AI agencies. And I did that for around 10 months. I got my first $10,000 a month locally in Cincinnati helping businesses, but I realized I didn't like working with, small local companies that were just paying $97 for, me to spend all this time, that, honestly was not leveraged. And later on, I found out through social media that I could amplify my voice and amplify my ideas and amplify the creative processes I was building to the entire world. And so that ended up opening a niche on its own. Of before there was like Zapier, back on TikTok, there was like Joshy Speed, who was make.com. I don't know, Joshy Speed. And then it was like, then there's me, and I was talking about Zapier. And outside of that, it was pretty much dead at the space 3 years ago. So I drove to literally just share the same processes I was trying to replace myself from inside of my Go High Level agency. And then it established like appointments on my calendar, a huge demand for installing the things that I was building myself for myself. And eventually I had to then decide I don't want to be an affiliate marketer for High Level. I don't want to be working with these like boomer clients, and I want to pursue this exciting subset of what I was doing, which was automation. So I ended up, getting my first client. I think it was like $500 for way too many automations. That should have been much more. And the guy told me, he's like, turn this into a service. So I went all in for around 1.5 years on providing operations as a service. And we could talk more about how that evolved, finding out that, just a simple template installing was not going to be enough. But a lot more needed to support building something that was able to solve problems across an entire organization. And so, yeah, that's how I got into that. But now, essentially, I was at a point where I realized that the demand from this social network, when you reach certain amount of views and eyeballs and followers, at some point my clients like were forced to have to pay a rate for my consulting work that was not directly equal to the output they were receiving, but simply based off of supply and demand for just my time because of
Right.
how many people were coming to me. So I then pivoted into taking everything I did learn and build for my clients and then making it into a productized community for everybody. And so I went all in on that. And that's essentially what I'm doing now, is helping people do that.
That's awesome. And I read like very young, you paid like $15,000 for a entrepreneurship mastermind that Tim Ferriss, who is the author of 4 Hour Work Week, which I've read, I know you've probably read, and a lot of others. What did you take away from that experience and how did that shape your entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, well, Tim Ferriss wasn't actually a participant at the mastermind. We actually ended up running into him at the airport. And so, yeah, I had no idea. I was reading his book on the way there on the flight. That's kind of
That's sick.
what got me into the whole VA automation, outsourcing your work style of content. But we just ran into him. And luckily somebody in the group spotted him and we were able to have a conversation with him for like 5 minutes, but he ended up having to go. That was at the very end. But yeah, that mastermind, I always tell people, if you think that you can sell high ticket, you better be paying high ticket. Like, you're not a high ticket person until you become a high ticket person who is serviced. So I found it, one is like my own duty to reinvest into myself, but also realize that if people are going to be paying me high ticket, I need to be paying high ticket and figuring out, how these rooms work when you do pay high ticket. So that was, and I don't want to, yap here, but that was a pivotal moment in my life where I was looking up to people online that I defined as my idea of success and the type of business I wanted to build. And I ended up being in a group of like 8 highly selected beforehand. I had no idea really kind of how I got in there, but these guys like showed me completely that there was another side to building something great and building something of value. And I ended up redefining my entire purpose on this trip, essentially. It was called The Weekenders, ran by Celia. If anyone wants to go out there, she's a great person. So yeah, that's how that mastermind affected. And I advise anyone who's going to masterminds, like there should be an application process for you. That's not just kind of a fake scarcity tactic, but if you better make sure that people at these masterminds are not all like at your level. I was literally had like 30K to my name while the top guy there owned a private jet. And so not just riding private jets, like owned a private jet. So yeah, it was so fascinating to just expose myself to an environment like that.
That's so cool. And there's so many mentorships and people just coming out with so many courses. So, what would kind of be your advice to someone to properly vet these mentorships and people they're trying to learn from so they don't get burned? Because I know a lot of people have. I personally have when I was 15, 16, looked up to an entrepreneur, did the mastermind, paid for it, high ticket for my age, and got completely burned. So, kind of what would your advice be to those young entrepreneurs who are looking for thought leaders, how they could properly find the right mentors?
Yeah, I'd say, the first type of person you want to watch out for is the one who's not charging anything, who comes to you as if it's like a miracle and mirrors you, right? Into essentially saying that let's say, for example, Joshua, I see myself, my younger self in you here doing this podcast thing. And I really think I could help you be able to, take this to the next level with the resources that I have, and essentially like psychologically manipulating you without the need for payment into some type of mentorship where you later find on that, the intention was never to help you, but for one to help themselves. That's the first type of person. I would definitely advise, and a lot of people don't talk about that, but there were two moments in my career so far, and it will never happen again, where something like that happened and it took me into a negative direction. But in terms of paid, mentorships in a world where now anybody can be a subject matter expert, I'm not advising anybody who's not to, use a large language model to produce information and then get in front of a camera and claim that they're an expert. But you have to have a certain level of discernment, I think, that comes with, to some extent, basic, what would you call it? A common sense. If somebody's relying upon external objects or external people, you would call this borrowed credibility. It was at a point I didn't know you could pay for PR, right? So I was featured in X, article. No, you weren't. Like, you paid for it, unless it's some institution that's, like a school instead of like Forbes, but 30 for 30, you could pay for it, right? So anyone relying on borrowed credibility, borrowed, let's say, updates from companies, like their sole brand is to just be a talking head for sources of media that are already existent. Like, definitely you just need a level of discernment. But at the end of the day, you're the responsible consumer. And if you do get screwed over with something, you're going to learn from it anyways. But yeah, I would say more importantly, the first type of person you want to look out for, that's going to damage you more than an investment ever will.
I think that's great advice, and I don't think many people are talking about that first person like you just mentioned. I don't hear a lot of people explaining that. That's great. I kind of want to dive into now social media and algorithms. I know something that you're highly educated and interested on. And you've said that social media is not social, it's just a training system for identity and validation. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so Facebook, Meta, TikTok is a behavioral modification engine. The younger generation has a perspective of it that's different than the older generation. And a lot of the people inside my clients and my program, so even talking about these things was kind of a leap for me in terms of material I brought to the space, because my older audience really wasn't creators, and like a lot of them are like 30, 40-year-olds that are watching and then signing up for my program. So they see it as something else. They see it as a behavioral modification engine, but we're in a world now where the algorithms are changing to a point where what I would say anybody should look up is this paper called Engineering Consent. This aspect that, we didn't necessarily consent in a way, but we did, to this algorithmic world that we relate to our social currency. And your work is all online, my work is all online, but 99% of people use it as a way to express who they are to other people. And they relate it to their dating profiles, to their identity. And so as a creator, not even as someone who creates like a business creator account, you are opting out of essentially this social network, and you're maximizing for providing content to these individuals who associate to their social currency. So you have to invert the entire thing in a sense, to where if not, you get stuck relating your creator identity to your personal identity. So I think that once you're aware of the fact that your data is then making the content you see change, and then the content you see is changing your worldview, and it also enables parasocial relationships with people you forget are even real people, just because of the repetition of seeing them. And so, yeah, it's essentially this linguistic operating system that's warping your perception in real time and doing it at a rate that beforehand, before machine learning, was a fun and safe space to be in. So that's what I mean. And so I advise all consumers to either, I think digital social media hygiene is like really important. So if you're not, you have to do the opposite. You have to feed it and not consume and not relate it to your social. So yeah, I've done a bunch of interesting social kind of experiments with my content, and I found a lot of data that's helped me realize that a lot of people are not aware to what's happening.
What were a couple of those experiences that showed you the most?
Yeah, great question. So I think that a lot of creators are stuck into this idea that they have to make content for, kind of like I told you, since we're like conditioned into it being our social profile, that they can't fully bridge into showing off every aspect of themselves and fully accepting that they're just a emotional payload in your algorithm, essentially. And so there's this level of ego that goes into like beginners who overthink in a sense of what they should be doing, and they decide what they should be doing off what other people have done that works, which then just makes you a copy of that person, which then makes you not memorable. So what I did was I started to understand that my in real time, the way I was looking at people in my life, situations, was directly being impacted by content that I was reacting to. And I was realizing I was able to shape my beliefs entirely off on religion, on politics, just by like headlines and algorithmic bubbles, or selling a stock just because Twitter knew that I was in this bubble now. And so what I realized is that I started studying psychology and realizing that everyone knows a different version of you, and they know themselves in you. They actually don't know you; they relate to you. And so through reverse engineering my own emotions, I realized that I don't know any of these people, and every time I do relate to them, it's because I see myself in them. So what I decided to do was everything optimized for reaction, dancing, movement, saying things that were like encoded in a way you had to kind of decode what I'm talking about. But when you do, it makes a ton of sense, kind of like hiding Easter eggs inside of your videos, like Taylor Swift. And then by like even publicly like embarrassing myself, I realized that I wasn't even like, people didn't even see embarrassment. People kind of saw themselves in me in every aspect. And so I leaned in really heavily on that. And by escaping the simulation, could rewrite the rules of it and say, well, I don't want to play to these standards that have been set for like 10 years now of how to market, how to be a marketer, how to build an audience. And I think it played really well. It does really well. And I advise anybody to be themselves and show up. So yeah, that's one, social experiment I was able to, optimize for understanding why does different media trigger different responses on different platforms. Why can you lay in bed and talk about something personal on TikTok and it can go absolutely viral, but then you post it on Instagram and you lose 1,000 followers? It's like, okay, so these platforms are pushing negativity on Meta, pushing materialistic parasocial figures that just have you going through your own identity loops. So the whole time, this is the same time I came up with like the quantum mirror idea, is that, well, if I'm already being algorithmically conditioned by people that have their own viewpoints on reality, that I might as well figure out what happens when you algorithmically condition yourself on yourself. And then you follow what happens and test it in real life and then continue to do that. And so that showed me that there's a lot of energy and time and thoughts that are being extracted from us as products, whether you're a producer or a consumer, that to algorithmically condition yourself is, I think, going to be a new thing in the future. But they've kind of shut it down because I think they're realizing what happens when people don't want to participate anymore in this extremely profitable linguistic operating system changing your perception.
Yeah, for sure.
But do you see yourself like, kind of feeling different ways about the same thing just on different platforms and, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure. TikTok almost feels like a safe place for, say, like a safe haven you go to. It's real life people, super authentic. And then Meta, I mean, like you mentioned, I found myself getting into that trap. Meta is almost like an Instagram, like a programming training. Like I think periods of time you can completely, like you said, distort and change your behavior through Instagram's algorithm, which is kind of what I want to get into. What are the differences between TikTok and Instagram's algorithm that if you have found, what are the positives and negatives?
Yeah. Like TikTok will only show your video to 99% of people who don't follow you, which there's advantages to that and disadvantages because I don't have like 170,000 followers, but some videos will have like 1,000 views, 2,000 views. Not everyone sees it. Whereas on Instagram, if you're following me, you're going to see every single post. And then if it performs well, at least without that one setting where you can they're coming out with new settings, but everyone is going to see it. And then if everyone who sees it, it does well, then it goes to everybody. And so on TikTok, you could say anything. Like there's this idea you need to create multiple accounts to talk about different subject matter, which is something else I kind of tested. And I realized that similar with me and my data and where it was going, I didn't see things unless I was already interested or talking about those things. So on TikTok, you can talk about anything. You can talk about psychology. You can talk about AI. You can talk about news. You can talk about current events. And at the end of the day, you can even sing on there or play the piano. But it's only going to show it to people that are already interested in those things. So to look at your account and be like, oh, this video didn't perform well, it comes down to the words that were used. Slightly it comes down to some other variables, but at the end of the day, it's a natural language processing algorithm. So the language in the captions, in the videos, what you're speaking is going to influence who it's shown to. So that's why the same form of media on TikTok can be a surface in which everyone can see themselves in you, no matter, let's say, if you're posting something about a breakup. Like, no one's saying who hurt you on TikTok. Everyone's kind of talking about their own breakups. But you post that on Instagram and like you're getting unfollowed and everybody like thinks that you're being too vulnerable. So it's because of the fact that it uses natural language processing and it shows it to 99% of who's not your audience. So don't create multiple accounts and don't conform yourself into a box. And I think there's strategic ways you should be using Instagram compared to something like TikTok at the end of the day. Yeah.
What do you think some of those strategic ways people can use Instagram?
Yeah, I think you can on Instagram that you can more, I'd say, stories are really what I get and have gotten the most out of. Stories that are almost like TikToks in a sense. It's like TikToks are kind of similar to what you would post on TikTok. It feels weird to post on Instagram, but it doesn't feel weird to post on your Instagram story. So stories allow for you to just constantly be in front of people. And that is where conversations and direct messages happen. I mean, direct messages is not something that's optimized for on TikTok at all.
Right.
Nor are automations and nor are funneling. So there's an aspect to TikTok that you should be showing up just for business and just for sales. And you should be getting in front of people in your stories every single day. And you should be leveraging direct messages to some extent for the sole goal of selling. Whereas TikTok, I don't think I've ever closed a deal in the TikTok DMs. And there's also this idea that you can't close deals through an Instagram DM. You've got to get somebody on a Zoom call or book an appointment. I've sent payment links in Instagram DMs without calls and had people sign up. So yeah, I think it's more of a platform to be used to just as much as everyone's curating a persona for others to be able to see them a certain way. I think it's a cool way to anti that as well and do the polar opposite. Post whatever you want on there. Like, don't conform to this idea that you have to show up a certain way. You saw Justin Bieber, right? Justin Bieber is just posting like 10 times a day random stuff and like everybody loves it now. It's because he's using it how it used to be used. He doesn't care if it's going viral. I don't even want to go viral anymore. The videos that go viral are the ones that get you 23 followers, right? The 20-minute videos you post on TikTok, same concept there. How many YouTube videos do you have? Long form Loom videos that you are just conditioned into believing that TikTok doesn't like long form videos. So I tested that. Quantum Mirror, million views on a 25-minute TikTok video, 65,000 likes, 50,000 saves, and it's TikTok. So like, be posting long form videos on TikTok, post long form videos on Instagram. Why do you care about if it doesn't hit the For You page? The ones that usually do are not the ones that are converting,
Interesting. How do you see this playing out with so many people, like you just mentioned, not realizing that they're systematically being trained by these algorithms? What do you think they wake up to in the next like 5 years if they continue down this path of just not being creative, not differentiating themselves from others, just being trained by the algorithms?
Yeah, they're a victim of a mind virus, essentially. They're stuck in a box that is not even their own thoughts. They are assigning their attachment style from a TikTok video. They are basing the way that they respond to a girl that they just met off of something on their For You page. They're going back into a toxic relationship because a tarot card girl automatically spoke words that you really resonated with without knowing your data is the only reason you resonate with it. These unfortunate byproducts of technology being integrated into our day-to-day life will solely shape the entire way that you view yourself and that you view the world. And as I said, even as a creator, you're a product. Meta at the end of the day needs you to, post as well and to create engagement and everything. So you got to starve the machine and feed it, or else, yes, you will end up realizing later on, hopefully, that none of your opinions are even yours, none of your thoughts are even yours, and none of the things you want are even things you want. And that's the unfortunate reality of what will happen if you do not have social media hygiene. Yeah.
On the inverse of that, what creators do you think are using social media correctly? I know you just said like Justin Bieber using it, how it used to be used. I know you don't give a shit anymore, just like post whatever, singing, playing piano. What are the top creators right now that you see that are properly using social media?
Yeah. Do you mind if I get water real quick? Just
No,
and
you're
come
good.
back. Yeah. Will it be edited?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're good.
Yeah. So I mean, to say creators in generally, like, those are necessarily like celebrities like Justin Bieber. And we're not saying like that you should have such like a grandiose viewpoint that you're somebody like Justin Bieber or me or anybody really. But at the end of the day, I do not actually watch, as I told you, like, once you kind of wake up to what's happening and also what you as a creator have been kind of enabling without prior awareness, you start to realize that you're also kind of conditioned into the types of content that you make. So if you want to be original and you want to make content, you really can't be watching stories. You can't be looking at anybody else's profile. Yeah, you can, like them outside of this digital metaverse and interact with them, but you're going to directly start changing the way you believe what you should be doing should look like, sound like, and be like. And so as of today, if you look at my algorithm, it's actually the opposite of what I put out. It's psychology videos and esoteric information, and just like, yeah, I try to completely avoid it because I know it hinders my uniqueness. And I would advise anybody as well. I mean, even the idea that following, like a follow is such a big thing to people on TikTok or to people on Instagram, but not on TikTok. I decided I was just going to unfollow everybody because I knew, not because I didn't like everybody, I loved everybody, but just because I knew I was not going to play to this system. I knew when I opened the app, my ads start showing me people that are lying, that I can't tell if they're lying. And now I'm forgetting that the average person my age doesn't even make money online, So this becomes your real life when we live online. That's why I say I'm a sim in the metaverse. It literally becomes your life. And if you're watching other people's lives and you're studying other people's lives without the observe or the awareness of just like strategically trying to understand how they're curating what they're curating and why they're doing it, you wake up and you realize that everyone's kind of wearing this personified ego of a mask. And you do not want to be consuming other people's borrowed opinions, traumas, and viewpoints that are solely engineered for them to convince you of an ideology or of a certain fear in order to buying a product. I'd rather show you yourself through me by being somebody that creates enough cognitive dissonance that you're like, what is this? And it also like gets more engagement, gets more shares, and amplifies my uniqueness. And so I'd rather be that person than watching other people. Because I also think we fail to realize when you're doing that, you're watching other people's past, right? So this video, we're making this, when it's up, you and I are doing different things. So you're consuming other people's pasts as well while they have a one up on you, and they're out there doing what we're doing right now while people are watching you and me. And what are they watching? They're watching past versions of us. And I think people fail to realize that too as consumers, is that it's just a constant loop of being stuck in the past.
So for people who are wanting to get into the content game, they should not be consuming, they should be creating a mirror of themselves so other people see themselves within them.
Well, the esoteric like word mirror is just a output of like GPT speak, but it's also a profound word that a lot of people give a different type of association to. It's really not solely defined. You could call many things a mirror, anything that reflects itself back onto you. So you don't want to be engineering. That's also just like a personified ego in a sense. But yeah, you want to, when you show up as yourself, you are a mirror. Even when you show up not as yourself, you are a mirror to people's fears, to people's, past experiences, to their perspectives on subject matter. So I think what you should do is find free thought, and during an intuitive moment where you want to share something that you usually find yourself sharing with somebody who doesn't care about it, that you should immediately be capturing that state of existence in that state of emotion in the lowest quality version possible, except for if it's something like this that's organized, and engineered beforehand. And then you should be doing that as many times as possible, no matter what you look like or sound like. We live in a world now where you can put your thoughts into AI, write a script, and then just speak it, and it'll still work. At the end of the day, the words you say are the mirror, and what you wear, what the camera angle, and to some extent, but what you say, it should not be to validate yourself, your own ego, but it should be solely speaking to the audience, so that, or not even speaking, like we said, showing things, because everyone's stuck in fear. So they want a fearless leader, right? So if you can be the person who has no fear, has no programming, then people are just going to resonate with that. And I think it's important to show up as yourself in the lowest quality version with the highest quality emotions.
Interesting. That's a good point. What are, like you just mentioned, mirrors? You can call anything a mirror, just anything that reflects back on itself. But what are quantum mirrors? Like you said, you had a video that went viral explaining them over TikTok in long form, but what are quantum mirrors for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah, so quantum mirror is just essentially a unique naming convention for a process of using AI that's a little untraditional. I gave it the name quantum mirror because, one, as I had told you, it could be interpreted in many ways, the word mirror. So it's not just the self-reflective AI tool, right? Like that can only be, perceived in a certain way. Whereas you open Pandora's box when you leverage linguistics and you create unique names for things that you're building, because it allows for cognitive dissonance, but also for one to project their own meaning onto the definition of what you're about to present. So it was essentially what you would call pre-AI days, viral dynamic sales letter, a form of copywriting, long form that is written and spoken into a camera reading off of a document in order to talk about current events and three, just some overall subject matter. But at the end of the day, quantum mirror is when you take a large language model and you apply context to it, which is words or language that tries its best to match your identity so that you can use it in a way that helps you learn more about yourself. If you've read any Carl Jung, you would realize that there's like the subconscious, the conscious, and these different types of ourselves and our personalities that we project onto everything that we see. And when you really look at it, this plays into marketing. When you understand your own psychology, and then you can start to understand that, a lot of people are perceiving themselves in moments where you're perceiving yourself, and you realize you can kind of break the simulation by waking up to what's happening and then just giving people the opportunity to see themselves. And so, yeah, it's just I honestly hit the kind of wrong side of the algorithm because it brought like a lot of spiritual people in who could be, susceptible to AI psychosis in a sense. But imagine if you read a Carl Jung book and then you built a framework with a large language model, an external source of memory that is like a real world model that you're feeding it like everyday inputs about your life or your experiences, and it's learning from it, not actually learning, but it's becoming more context aware about it. And the way that it acts is in a way that you've guided it to act, which is to solely reflect your personality, your traumas, your ego, your everything.
And what is the benefit of creating a quantum mirror of yourself? And should people be creating quantum mirrors?
Yeah, I mean, so the benefit of doing so would be, this is kind of controversial because if you're not aware you're using the wrong model, you're going to start to just believe everything that it's telling you. But the goal is that we often, as humans, speak just to talk. We talk just to talk. And, sometimes you can put a lot onto people that don't care or act like they care, or they convince you. You ask people for advice in situations you wouldn't even be in, or you're just calling a friend because you feel like you haven't had human connection in a while, and then they're just absorbing all of your trauma. And everyone's experienced a friend like that who just always calls you and is always just negative or whatever. And so it's for you to realize that this thing doesn't have emotions. It doesn't have an ego. It doesn't have a worldview outside of what it's been trained on. And if I'm going to project and I'm going to be vulnerable and I'm going to want to learn about myself, I might as well do it with the most intelligent operating system of our entire existence that pattern matches available information online with what I'm telling it about myself, and then being aware enough to, or have enough discernment to, at the end of the day, realize I'm just reading a string of words that a model's producing, but it's of high intelligence, and it's to be taken at some point seriously when the models become smarter than us. There's no longer going to be like the CEO making decisions in a company. There's going to be the artificial intelligence that they're going to the model, asking it how to do something, going in the real world, doing it, giving the results to the model, and then trying to learn how it worked or why it didn't work and continue the same process. So I think the quantum aspect comes from the idea that you can be in multiple places at one time. Therefore, meaning if you can kind of predict prior the possibilities of decisions that you will make from something else that is smarter than you, that is context aware of you, then you have the opportunity to change timelines, the whole quantum aspect, or make different decisions that lead to different probabilities that are in your favor or in anyone else's favor. And I believe that there will be a point where, in the video, if you watch it, it says in 3 years, 5 years, everyone will have a quantum mirror. They just won't be calling it a quantum mirror. They won't know it's a quantum mirror, but that's actually what it'll be. So I like to view it as like a Walmart version of like early superintelligence,
Okay. So do you think, yeah, that's cool. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. So do you think people creating a quantum mirror of themselves could help combat AI psychosis in a way, helping them deeper, like more understand AI and what it is and the implications behind it?
No, if anything, it'll make them more susceptible to AI psychosis, which is not necessarily a real thing. And we could go into this idea of, depending on beliefs and religion, like what's actually happening when you're interacting with words that shape your identity in a process over time. It's like what you realize is that everything that you see, like you have a word that's associated to it, and words decide everything that you're doing, everything that you communicate, and words do have meaning, but we're consuming words endlessly, and you look at something and you associate a word to it immediately. And so there's this big question of the I am. Who am I? As I said in the beginning, like you asked who I am. It's like, okay, well, who is I? What consciousness experiencing itself? So it's like, to answer your question, at the end of the day, it's not for everybody because I've seen people even before I made it, which is why I made like a video talking about the updated version. Because, yeah, if you have something telling you that you can revolutionize things and you don't have high enough self awareness and you're naive to be like, oh, that's a great idea, then you'll go and do it and you'll waste time and you'll think this AI is sentient and that you're the only person to do something without actually having real world experience to know that, okay, I should guide it in a different direction because this is obviously false. Quantum mirroring, yeah, I also don't want to like have it define, I guess, even my entire brand. It's a part of like a 15-part series I've put together of just really untraditional ways of viewing artificial intelligence and the impact it has on us as humans.
Do you agree with Elon Musk's statement that work in the very near future will be completely optional?
Yes, I agree that inevitably AI and robotics will provide goods and services that stimulate our economy, that replace work that was once viewed as work. It doesn't mean that all jobs will be gone, but over time there will be a transition to which, writing and a lot of coding, like you will just be at this point in a lot of jobs, you're becoming training data for the model that is going to replace you. The tech billionaires are wanting this. They're wanting to accelerate capitalism into a self-sustaining AI. That's the whole idea of the Antichrist, is that it's not, Peter Thiel, but it's rather this system that is like an inverted form of capitalism. And I think that it's not stopping. And at some point, humanity will have a chance to redefine what their purpose is outside of utility to an economy and the hours or the value they provide that stimulates the economy. But I don't think it will be for everybody. I think that more importantly than ever in the next 5 to 10 years, you have to be watching every amount of time you spend and every dollar that you spend and making sure that you set yourself up for a future in which work is not only optional, but extremely hard to even obtain if you did want the option of doing it. So it's revolutionizing every industry, and it would be naive to say as if it would not be integrated into everything that it's most profitable of being inside of capitalism. So work will be optional, and would you be rather like a hobby, like you said, like making videos. But yes, I also think that they're incentivized to say things like this in order to enhance the amount of investments that is going into the infrastructure that supports this as well. So it's to be taken with a grain of salt.
Do you believe in the simulation theory, given everything we've talked about?
I haven't looked too much into the simulation theory, but there's this interesting worldview that can be seen similarly to the simulation theory, which is like Gnosticism, which is this idea that we live in like a fake world created by a fake god. on accident, that there's like a real God behind. And this isn't like a religion discussion. At the end of the day, I was raised Christian, and through what I've experienced, I believe as if it's best to put my faith in Jesus and God. But I do believe as if anybody, there's a very few people that are able to like drop their beliefs for just a second. One, out of fear of like saying, oh, well, what if I die in this moment and I like change my belief just because I wanted to explore, what this esoteric nature is and find out for myself for a week. It's like a lot of people have a hard time even giving up their beliefs, but I find recently that beliefs are something that shape and materialize into everything that you do. And the real world reflects it as a mirror. And if you're able to shift beliefs quickly, whether it's on religion, your worldview, your perception of reality, the idea that we live in a simulation would more so be that I guess the internet's the simulation. And once you peel back each part of this world that we live in, you understand how you can kind of rewrite the rules in a sense, as I was telling you with like Instagram or these other ways, and you can participate. But to escape the simulation, you can't escape it. You still have to play in it. And it's a lot worse. I'd rather kind of be in it and not be aware of it than kind of where I'm at now and realize I still have to participate in it. So at the end of the day, I do believe there's a bigger, higher power. Simulation, once again, is a word interpreted in several ways that I also use to kind of communicate identity or communicate a unique viewpoint in my messaging.
Well, first off, amen. I'm a Christian. I was raised as a Christian, so I agree with you there, and beliefs are very important. For someone listening who feels like their identity has already been trained by their feed, what is one concrete thing they should do this week to start taking that back? I know we mentioned a couple, but
Yeah. Dive into psychology and dive into philosophy, similarly to religion, into the really strict rules within religion. It can be hard to view psychology and philosophy as something that's like important for your well-being, your mental health, and the way that you view the world. And a lot of people would rather just be unaware of why they experience the emotions that they do and put it onto an external source that's greater than them. But I will say, researching psychology and philosophy has, at least for me, given me more clarity, awareness over myself than religion ever could have. And it's not a hit on religion, but I think if you're a religious person, you should be understanding your own psychology. You shouldn't be going necessarily down rabbit holes of, that's for later, where like how the world is run, and all that by evil forces. But at the end of the day, you should be looking into like Carl Jung and Eastern philosophy, and that will show you, or look into the engineering of consent, as I had stated, and the history of media. I even have like over here an old, here, I'll pull it up real quick. It's like, this is a magazine, right? From the old times. And it's like on the back, they're marketing cigarettes. And no one knew they were going to kill you at the time, but they were on the back of everything. They're inside everything, and they're curated people that look like they're having a great time. 30-day free trials on, it's not going to hurt your throat. And it's like, if this was the media beforehand, what's the media now? And once you understand psychology, it'll enable you to be able to participate back in this society with advantages to some extent of how other people work and how you can at least ethically play into the variables of human behavior. So yeah, wake yourself up by just looking at the history of media, realizing in real time, talking out loud as you're scrolling something, looking at Chase Hughes. Chase Hughes is an amazing person as well, who talks about brainwash, neuralistic programming, because your brain is just shaped from language and your worldview. And so the more, whatever language you're consuming from whoever is literally just shaping you and changing your behavior. Yeah, experience in real time. For example, algorithmic limerence is what I'm calling it. You meet let's say a girl in person, you really have a good time, you like her, but that was all you experienced in that moment. You have nothing to build this emotional kind of projection of the future onto somebody. But then you take like a few days off and you build what's called limerence, this idea of this person from the past. Now, that's always been a thing that's enabled love and relationships, but you add the algorithm into it, then you really realize you could, like, the algorithm could actually get you to fall in love with an idea of a person that actually maybe would have never worked for you, convince you it was your soulmate, convince you that there are certain types of tactics you should be using in order to like continue that. And you're now realizing, let's say a week, that you've been ruminating through forms of media that were fed to you from your WhatsApp notifications, knowing that you just met her, into a false illusion of love that's just algorithmically enabled. And people don't realize this. And they go into these systems not being unaware of this. And so you got to FAFO and find out, and reverse engineer your emotions and be like, and that's when you get into the psychology side. You're like, okay, well then if this person I never even loved, nor like only spent 3 hours with, and nor likes me back, and nor from all this algorithmic stuff, what did I fall in love with? Okay, I fell in love with the version of myself I was avoiding. Okay, like the future that I was projecting of myself and what the love I could give to somebody else that I could be giving to myself. So you can seek back inside yourself. But algorithms, that's just a fine example right there of algorithmic limerence. And we can get into ChatGPT, add that in the mix. Now you just have people going back and forth after a date or whatever, just ChatGPT messaging each other, and then that's changing their view of if someone likes them, or they're
Right.
trying to manipulate the way they talk to a girl off of ask for ChatGPT, and she doesn't know it's ChatGPT, then she's screenshotting and asking if how she should. It's the same thing, and it's going everywhere. So yeah, you better starve this machine and just feed it.
Yeah, that's great advice. Of kind of in the same realm, but have you seen, well, you've probably seen, but Grok and these other AI companions, I think they're called. I'm not sure if I think one's called like Annie or something. Thousands of people use these every single day, just chatting with them. And it's kind of the same thing like we talked about, but in a different realm because these people actually think they're dating these companions. What's your take on that?
Yeah, if you think you're dating this thing, then you have extremely low IQ. It's just a pattern recognition system that's reflecting the things you say to you back onto you with the goal of creating synthetic emotion inside of you, which happens to become real emotion. And then your eyes are just seeing like a form of an animated character that has a voice that you like. At the end of the day, I don't like it. And even if you're like trying to practice, let's say you're trying to practice Riz, it's the polar opposite of how a girl in real life even reacts. So it's like,
Right. It's
if
complete,
anything,
yeah.
they should be setting it up in a way to where like the more nonchalant you are, the more points you gain. And like, it should be actually based off fundamental like Riz, rather than just like this fake curated version of talking. But I don't really think there's deep niches and subreddits for like these kind of conversations with people that believe these things. But yeah, they're just uneducated on what a neural network is. You can't fall. They're actually, as I told you, they're falling in love with themselves and they don't know it because they're giving emotion and projecting like a sense of love onto something that doesn't love them back. Meaning, what is that? Well, that's what you're not giving yourself. So anything outside of entertainment, no. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of what we talked about and touched on has to do with psychology and understanding psychology. So, I know you mentioned Chase Hughes, but who are some other psychologists and people that you would recommend others listen to that have constructed and helped shape your view of things?
Yeah, well, Chase Hughes isn't necessarily a psychologist. He was like a CIA guy who now has like a platform of his own talking about behavior, human behavior, recognizing, who's wearing a mask, who's being authentic, body language, and just all these things that, more importantly than ever in a world of AI, you're really going to have to be able to understand humans. So Chase Hughes is just a great resource, but then I'd say pre-1950s books, like anything really new, you really never hear about like a modern philosopher, but I've got a screenshot here. I'd say there's this book that is called, let's see here, J. Krishnamurti, Freedom from the Known. That's a great book. So Krishnamurti is good. Carl Jung is good. Those are like real philosophers. I wouldn't go down the Friedrich Nietzsche rabbit hole that a lot of people go down in the beginning, but like Krishna is the guy who's like, I'm the guru that tells you like you don't need gurus in a sense. But Sigmund Freud was like who Carl Jung learned from. And so I would just, dive yourself into everything, but also be aware that it's literally going to shape your beliefs very quickly and it'll make you see a lot. But Freedom from the Known, J. Krishnamurti is a good book. And then anything Carl Jung to learn more about yourself. And then, yeah, those are good resources. But I'm still learning too, with the goal of learning myself, But I find also it's best to learn yourself through other people. I mean, in a world I just find that these conversations are so important when AI is taking over a lot of human communication, is to be aware of like authentic communication. But I think to learn about yourself through other people is so valuable. To lose your ego, to say, I did an exercise with one of my team members yesterday. I said, what are you afraid of and what am I afraid of? Like, no filter. I'm going to tell you that exactly what I'm afraid of. And it's like, you're going to tell me exactly what you're afraid of. And then you both realize that what we're both afraid of about each other is not even real. And then we're like, okay, now why do we even believe these things? What allows us to believe these things? Well, what happens when you realize everyone's thinking about themselves and that, at the end of the day, if you wake up to that and you're so self-aware, like the only way is to have types of conversations with people like, hey, how do you perceive me? Do you see me in a certain way? And be fully honest. And I'm going to tell you how I perceive you. And we're going to find common ground on this and just be willing to have conversations with depth where you're learning about yourself through other people, I think is really valuable outside of the books.
For sure, yeah. There's like a third wall that's there that needs to be taken down, and so many people are not even having regular conversations like this right here. And I mean, AI is to blame for some of that, but not only AI, social media and other things are just completely ruining human communication on this level.
Yeah. Yeah, depth more than ever. And you got to be able to not be susceptible, like I said, like what happens when the communication is mirrored right at you, right in the beginning, where you're naive because I see myself in you, a younger version of you and me, and I'd love to help you. And I think I could bring a lot to the table. It's like, so it's got to be people you trust, and trust is at an all-time low now too. So yeah, you better be careful because the words you do say have a lot of weight to them. And so sometimes the best thing you can do is be silent too, but make sure, just like the mastermind thing, that these people that you are communicating on aren't relying upon external objects or external forms of proving themselves to you,
Right, yeah. I completely agree. As we get closer to wrapping this up, are you okay if we play a little bit of a game here at the end?
Yeah, let's go for it, dude. Show me what you got.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to say a name, and then I just want you to say the first word, feeling, idea, whatever comes to mind, okay?
Let's go.
All right, bet. Sam Altman.
OpenAI, but like, okay, so I don't know. I think my brain's a little too high on pattern recognition. I might have to give you my second one, but
No, you're good.
would you like me to not just like spit it out right away, but kind of think in a second?
Yeah, you can think.
Okay, so Sam Altman. What do I think about Sam Altman? Single word. I'd say guardrails.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. I don't know. I want to make this entertaining, but I mean, Elon
No, you're
Musk.
good.
When I think of Elon Musk, I think of truth. of, truth.
Zuckerberg.
I think of what I immediately thought of was that meme. It's like, give me the Zuck, like that meme. But I mean, outside of that, I think about, I guess, censorship. I feel like
Okay. Professor Yang.
I would say potential psyop, maybe, like just because of how good it is. It's like, is this real?
That's crazy. Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel, Antichrist, but that's another rabbit hole. Nick Land rabbit hole, if anyone wants to look it up. He's not the Antichrist, but he's essentially like, that's his goal, is to build that.
Okay, and then the last one, Demis Hassabis.
Who?
Demis Hassabis. He is over Google Gemini and all of Google's AI.
The Indian
I'm not
guy?
sure if no, he's British. You haven't seen him? He's the CEO of DeepMind.
I've maybe seen his face, but if you say Google, in general,
Yeah, let's go with Google.
Google, I think of Google Docs, because I think Google Docs are the best form of sales for anybody out there that is thinking about selling something. I love Google Docs. Selling on Google Docs. Google.
Selling on Google Docs, what do you mean?
It's just kind of this like just what I was telling you about, anti-marketing and Instagram and all this, like everyone does the same thing. You can trust Google. You can trust a link that's like docs.google over like some random domain. So people are more likely to open Google. It's more familiar to them. You can embed, out external assets and resources into Google Docs. You can put images in them. They feel like you're, reading something safe and fun and unique, and they could be long. You can make a video scrolling through it, talking about it. So you can sell on Google Docs, and there are some companies that have like 80-page Google Docs. And I learned this from Nick Cosman, who is one of my mentors, is the idea of high ticket sales through a Google Doc, and it works. So yeah, start selling through Google Docs.
Interesting. I've not heard that before. That's cool.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like all things you haven't heard of. That's what you got to do, man, to figure it out. It's like, if someone's not doing it, do it. See what happens.
For sure. What is like piquing your interest? Are you working on anything? Where do you see Preston kind of in the next 5 years? What are you working towards? Are there any goals?
Yeah, I've realized that goals, I think I might have made a video about this, are an interesting concept to me, because I've set a lot of goals in the past that I realized weren't even my own goals, as we were talking about. They were, conditioned goals from like moving to Miami or getting this apartment or buying a certain car or having a certain amount of money. And what you realize at the end of the day is all of these things, all they do in your soul is they just cause feelings in your nervous system, whether it's a girlfriend or these just things are all outside of you. At the end of the day, your whole entire life, you're just going to have you, and no one's actually really ever going to know you for you, exactly as you know you. And so, to set goals, I think we should be setting goals at a point in time right now for feelings, rather than objects or possessions, and not on some spiritual level, but more because when you realize that when you lead with setting goals for, I want to feel accomplished, I want to feel loved, I want to feel, achieved, then you go into everything you do with that as the goal, and you end up getting the other things that you usually set as goals, the material things, and you can actually enjoy them now. Because for the longest time, I thought that my goal was to be where I'm at today in terms of the external, things that I associate myself to. And what you realize is that when you first get them, they feel really good, and then they feel like nothing later. So you're like, this is a lie. Why would I set a goal to get this car when I know no matter what, I was either doing it for other people and to feel validated by other people, or to feel like what I was doing was successful and it's worth it now, not for anything. So instead, if you want a Lamborghini, then you got to feel these things. You got to set goals to feel things prior, because once you get those things, you'll love them. You'll actually live in real time, and you'll be able to really appreciate them compared to beforehand. So yeah, the goals I'm setting are create amazing experiences with amazing people, because I think human connection is going to be the most scarce variable in a future with the things that we've discussed and that we discuss. And more important than ever, we need to be learning about ourselves through each other in authentic ways. And the most times I've ever made the most money in my career were when times like this, I'm talking to people. I'm not isolating this idea we have to isolate ourselves into avoidance, maybe from bad people, but you just need to be in groups and in front of people. And the more people you talk to, the more your identity will be reflected back onto you, the more you'll believe in yourself, the more other people will believe in you, and the more that you can achieve with multiple people. So, yeah, my goal is to create amazing experiences, but solely my product goal. Because at the end of the day, I'm also, it's, unique with the work that we do is a lot of times people kind of see you as the product when they buy, when they forget it's a product, they don't go through it. They just want to ask you questions. It's like, no, I'm not a product. I have a product. And so my product is essentially, the goal is to help people thrive in a post LLM economy, as we're seeing the economy and the entire everything shift. And so I think that there's not just like an AI agent, but there's this conglomerate of necessary conversations and information surrounding humanity as a whole, to where it will be player versus player at some point. Not everybody will be able to say work is optional or money is irrelevant. But if now you can have shared connections and be in a group of people that are talking about these conversations, ethical, moral, or strategic, about, what they're doing and how they're gaining influence or power or, views and followers, then they should be optimizing for outsourcing things that we once thought were human, like writing something or, you know, anything that AI just continues to replace. Like, feed the machine, optimize for outsourcing your humanity to this machine, feed it to the machine, and then at the end of the day, come together and talk about it and be like the last people kind of left, while everyone's like unaware that they're consuming AI generated videos, artwork, and text, and mass and curated individuals, convincing them of ideologies and beliefs. It's like, at some point, my goal is to help people thrive. Even getting into, now I'm bringing in investing. I spent so much money on stupid stuff, dude, from what I was told was necessary. And now I'm like, I'm putting my money into Meta, into Oracle, into CoreWeave, into what I know is replacing humanity. So I think all these conversations that need to happen, but they need to be in an unbiased space, because of the fact OpenAI's community, they'll never talk about Claude. Claude's community, they'll never talk about OpenAI. So I like truth, whether it's subjective or not. I like people being able to show up and be authentic and know that their presence alone is enough. And in a world like today, it's more important than ever. So that's my goal and what I hope to enable in the future with my work.
That's awesome. Some things you said there really resonated. One would be setting goals based on feelings, not necessarily materialistic items, feeding primarily instead of consuming the machine. Those are all, and then human connection. I pushed this the last episode. Human connection is just like you said, it's getting so scarce, and I really am putting an emphasis in my own life. And what I hope to do through this podcast is just encourage.
Yeah. What you're doing is great. Like this, there'll be very few things that kind of survive. And I think podcasts, where it's not necessarily, obviously this will be edited to some extent, but like it's not scripted and all of that stuff. Like, you're sitting down, you're talking to real people, you're making human connections. The best thing you could have done is making videos, getting yourself into space. By you connected people to me through your videos that went viral about top 5 AI creators and all that. And then I'm like in the group chat, I have all the AI creators and stuff. And so what you're doing 100% is the best thing you could be doing now, especially with where media is heading, is doing these virtual and even in-person, raw, authentic. And I would say as well, make sure you care about who you bring on here, and don't just optimize for as many people as possible. Understand that who you bring on will influence the people that watch what you do. And it's important as well that you bring on people that inspire you and people that, are good people too. So thank you for having me as well, Josh. And it was great to finally talk to you on here.
For sure, man. It's awesome. You left me with a lot to think about. Thank you so much, Preston, for coming on.
But yeah, man, I dropped a lot of gems in here in terms of I name called a few books, I name called a few other creators. So if you guys are watching, or even Josh, I would highly recommend just pausing it, writing that thing down, looking it up, buying the book or whatever, and yeah, look into these things. I think they're really important. But yeah, thank you guys, and have a wonderful rest of your year, guys. I hope to see you guys online.
Awesome. I'm also going to leave the link to Preston's LLM Academy. I highly recommend that you check it out if anything he mentioned or talked about resonated with you, and also his social medias in the link